have the time and energy to pursue different things. You gotta expect people to grow. And if that person starts growing away from you, which is one of the major reasons why we are seeing divorce in the quote-unquote conscious community, well, one person didn't really get in it to go this African way. They were really comfortable where they were at, and then you kept going, and that's different. Then you might need to rethink the relationship. Do not apply a double standard to each other when it comes to personal appearance and duties. Always be egalitarian in your perception of each other. Sisters have babies. Baby fat comes on. And in many cases, it stays on. We see it in women continuously. This is natural. We're talking about abnormal, but this is natural. This is the natural order of things. Okay? And brothers will sit and want to judge, but don't want to look at the potbelly.
Yeah, that's it.
There's got to be some balance somewhere. We're not supposed to be sitting in that kind of judgment. And you didn't go through that 9 months. Or what came after that. I remember a brother, as soon as the baby was born, he's trying to drag her off to the gym to start exercising everything all over again. I'm saying, but it wasn't mine, so. Be the person, i.e. follow the role you claim. Be who you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be the provider and the protector, to be the provider and protector. That doesn't mean that she can't bring in more than you can. But that's still supposed to be first and foremost in your mind in terms of your responsibilities. That's a role. Unless you all have agreed on something different. And to me that doesn't fit. At least don't let the provider change. Don't let the protector. And when I was younger, my greatest fear was that I would go blind. Because if I'm blind, I can't protect, because I can't see the threat. So, and interestingly, when I had those little silly, and there was no reason why, I was a psychology major, and you start analyzing yourself too much when you're a psychology major. But at that time, common sense kicked in. She was taking the gun safety class. She went to the range. So now I have to worry about if I go blind. Oh, and she can shoot. We just went to the range last week. She can shoot. Right. Which is something that all sisters, all sisters need. African women are the least able to prepare themselves in war. You go into the gun magazines, you go to the ranges, you see white girls. You see white children, you see white men. They are training. They are training. And we're like, oh, well, I can protect her. I'm out in California and she calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's somebody breaking into the house. No, she needs to be able to shoot better than me, and your home needs to be set up in such a way so that she's protected whether you're there or not. And this isn't giving away any secrets. If you want to get to my wife right now, or once it turns dark, you're going to have to go through 2 deadbolts, a regular lock, 3 deadbolts, a regular lock, and 2 other doors. And she's going to be sitting there in the dark waiting for you to open up the door. She knows. We've gone through the drills. People have African institutions, schools. You know the tornado drills, you know the flood drills, you know the fire drills. They have no different drills for defense. So an enemy comes in the door, but we're saying that we're warriors. The children are not prepared to do anything but get shot. Drills that we have in our institutions need to be set up in such a way so that children become invisible. And they need to know to move in such a way so that nobody knows that they're in there. There needs to be a word, a command that they know or they hear. And one of the brothers advised me, well, a number of years ago, always have a whistle. Because if gunfire breaks out, people really are going to hear what you're saying. And if anybody's been around guns, they're kind of loud. So you can't hear anything, but you can hear a whistle through the gunfire. So you also have developed a system of whistle signals. So 2 signals mean go to that room. 1 means go outside, that way. Okay? They need to know. They need to know that just like they know fire drills. If people know that you are a warrior, then you're a threat. So anybody can come to your door. Do not lie to each other. 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 That can be hard sometimes because of some of the silliness that people do, or some of the stuff they're not thinking that they do. But you gotta think about when you were a child. Was it better just to go ahead and tell it at that time and get it over with, or stretch it out for like 2 or 3 weeks and then it's gonna be worse? Do not cheat on each other. One of the things in the conscious community in Atlanta, this mecca of consciousness, that's a major problem in the conscious community, is people sleeping around. Along with the drugs and alcohol. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. And people look at Atlanta as some mecca of consciousness. It's not. It's not. But the sleeping around is ridiculous. The alcohol and the drugs is ridiculous. A school fell apart because of the sleeping around. And the children, they know changes in the atmosphere. They can figure out what's going on. We want to pretend that they're stupid when we say they're geniuses. I just give you an example. When I was a child, we did the Christmas thing. My parents would have, the gifts in the house for my brother and I, 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas. We knew what we were getting within 2 days after they brought them. Children can find answers. Children know exactly what's going on. We had a child in the neighborhood a few years ago. He was in the 3rd grade. He wired the black boxes that folks would have on their TVs, the child control thing. He got paid to rewire them so that the children could still operate them in the parents' absence. If we say they're genius, we need to recognize they can see. We're supposed to be the models. They can see. Be trustworthy. Do not accept what is not fair. Regularly indulge in personal, complimentary, and family positive affirmations. Regularly consult elder compliments. Most of the people who come to us, they've reached a bad point. You need to talk to elder compliments, not elder individuals unless they are widowed or, divorced, what have you. They've been married for quite a few years. And that needs to be a model in our community of leadership, man and woman leadership, not just man, not just woman. Man and woman leadership. We're family-centered, family-oriented people. It's one of the major things that people, they come when it's so late. When the problem has gotten so big. And they thought that it's only them for so long. That's one thing that we see consistently. When people, because they're caught up in the heat of their issue, they think that it's only them. And it's like all of the couples almost. And we sit there and we laugh at the beginning when we first hear it, and we have to tell them, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing because we just went through that last week. We just talked to a couple of months ago, or we went through that 4 years ago. This is nothing unique. Not that you two aren't unique, but and that takes a lot of the tension out of it. When you talk to folks who have been through it, then they can really analyze better. It's like what Europeans have done with our sense of intelligence, where we understood at one time information, knowledge, wisdom. Information, knowledge, wisdom. First acquired, second acquired, finally acquired. Information, knowledge, wisdom. They flipped it around, so information is wisdom. So we think that we know everything already. So our children, at a homo lecture here in New York a number of years ago, a child wanted to argue with me about the origins of homosexuality. I had 9 years of research on this. You just coming out of what? Oprah? Okay. And this is the final one. And I ask everybody to remember, if you have a pencil, write down, Medowo. Medowo. That's a tree word that means I love you. Medowo. So if you ever hear any now on the phone, we'll say 2 last things that we'll say before we get off the phone. B for ODA, which means African Liberation, Medowo. Every morning, every night, no matter what else. B for ODA, Medowo. B for ODA is a tree word meaning African liberation. And we started that because John Henry Clark, it's in his video, A Great and Mighty Walk. And he talks about how the Romans would greet each other every morning. It's affirmation. Greeting fellow Roman, Egypt must fall. And they affirm this. When you affirm something, giving your brain instructions, you're going to find a way to do this. And they affirm this every morning. So we have to affirm African liberation, African sovereignty. So we say a BB-40, and we need to say it as much as possible. So we say it in the morning, we say it whenever we see each other, we say it when people sneeze. We had to find some way where it was common. So at Occupant Institute or in our home, whether the students are there or not, and they know when someone sneezes, you say a BB-40. Because, and they made the argument, what does bless you mean? How does that, I mean, where does that come from? Okay? But a BB-40, and it gets to be heard, it gets to be affirmed, it gets to be said. So every time somebody sneezes in our house, first and last thing we say to is going to be a BB-40, African liberation, because we're affirming that we are victorious already. Now, it's not coming. We're already. Okay? If we weren't, then this wouldn't be going on right now. Nobody here would have awakened. You'd all be still brain dead, light out. Okay? So that means that we're winning, and that's what's scaring them. If I have defeated you, then I'm not going to keep trying to destroy you. If it's the end of the discussion, I'm going to just let you continue to fall down on your own. I don't have to do anything to you. So obviously, we haven't lost because they're still trying to kill us. They're still trying to miseducate us. They're still telling the lies in the school. They're still telling the lies in the media. So apparently, we haven't lost. Now close with a BB-40.
I gotta give him a round of applause. Stand up and give this man a round of applause. BB-40. African liberation. All day, every day. I gotta say it like we mean it. All day, every day. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us some quick questions. Anybody have any questions? Let me finish. You got a question? Michael Imhotep, you got a question? You got loud enough voice. You don't need the mic, right?
Quick question for you. You talked about how there's no evidence of homosexuality being practiced in traditional African culture prior to invasion. And oftentimes, you know, when the Straight Black Pride Facebook event group, you have people, and even on my Facebook fan page, I've had people cite instances of homosexuality amongst Africans in 1600s, 1700s, what have you. But the argument that I make is that you assume that Europeans did not come to the continent until the 1600s or 1700s. The Greeks invaded in 332 BC, Romans in about 30 BC, and then the Arabs in 639. All of them practiced homosexuality in pedophilia. Can you talk about that and what existed prior to those invasions?
I will always start that with, and I only have this discussion with warriors, because I don't deal with the, and there are people whose responsibility it is. So for you, Irritated Gina, you need to, because that's the kind of work that you need to do. To me, the first point is that the greatest evidence is that there was no evidence. So there's no record with it. I was talking about that in Homosexuality, Feminization, African Male, where all of these things that are cited, I think it's when female wives, boy husbands. The guy says in the preface to the book, these were, he gives the dates of it and says, you know, and then he says, last thing he says, but this is still not to negate that this was pre-European invasion. But if all of the dates, all the information they're talking about is way past when Europeans arrived, then you have no choice but to make that conclusion. If there's no evidence before them, then that's only logical. But of course, we also have to remember the truth of liars. Okay? They've been working very hard on turning Malcolm into a homo. Right? Okay? Very hard. We have to understand the truth and the propaganda of liars. These people, systematically, scientific is the method. Systematically, scientifically, politically, academically, they proved that we were their intellectual inferiors during our enslavement. They proved this scientifically. And everybody bought it. Well, most folks bought it. Everybody bought it. So they scientifically proved this. Now they're going to prove through repeating it over and over and over again, through having multiple people writing about it, that homosexuality exists in traditional African society. This would not be a debate if we were powerful people we need to be, right? That's the only way that they can do that, because they are exercising power over us. If we have the power we're supposed to have, this would not be a discussion. And that's one of the things we have to realize in terms of where we need to go. If they were not in charge of the media, if they were not in charge of the schools, if they were not in charge of what have you, this would never come up as an issue. It would never have been a statement. We have to remember that, and not get caught up in arguments that really have nothing to do with us. Yeah, we need to check our own. But we'll get so involved in it because it's been made into an issue for us. And it's got nothing to do with us. What it has to do with is our inability to recognize our power and act on it. But there's no evidence of homosexuality in traditional African society. And it's just like now, you will find the books that are coming out, being put out by the feminist press, are about black men beating their wives in traditional African society and using their wives to make money and not taking care of the children, being drunk all the time.
It's the negative.
That is a negative, but that's still post-European invasion where the political and communal structure in African society was changed to suit to fit their model. How could you, it's our story lessons. When you look at how European females were treated in traditional European society, when you look at how many were killed,
Burned at the stakes.
The children who, during the Crusades, who were taken and being killed. The reason why you had female homosexuality come into existence was because of the way that the men treated them and the level of the left. And then you compare that with what you see in traditional African society. The power that women had. Only name that most of us know in terms of medical, that chief medical doctor was Imhotep. But there was a chief medical doctor by the name of Prashat. She was the doctor who was in charge of all of the doctors in Kemet. We forget about all of the well, I guess because the names are language change. So we say scribes now. In Kemetic society, they were called sesh, S-E-S-H. And sesh were the males, and this is a male occupation, and there wasn't this, well, we're better than you all because we're male, we have this job. The males were called sesh who did this work, who did the transcribing. They were named after Seshet, who was the female goddess of the library. How would you have the most known goddess in our tradition is a female, Ma'at? We don't find anything like that in traditional European society. The treatment of the women was so different. In traditional African society, women owned more farmland than the men did. The goddess of the basket, the goddess of seeds, these are all goddesses. Because this was women's work. But there, we're talking about egalitarian. You're talking about women's work. Here, it's very different. At one point in time, really at the time of the black and white Perry Mason shows and before, most of the secretaries were men. And at that time, it was a pretty lucrative, really prestigious job to be a secretary. As women came in and it became a pink collar job, the prestige of the job went down and so did the pay. That's European patriarchy at work. So when we look at how we are as a people, it helps us to understand what we weren't capable of. Because this came out of something. To have the names of the creative female, okay? To have systems where the Kemetic to-be pharaoh had to marry a black woman from Ethiopia, Kush, in order to become the pharaoh. To have queen mothers where what she said, she could remove a king from power. I don't know anything like that in traditional European society. Military leaders out of the Yazoo, corps of African women who were the best archers, who came to be mercenaries for other African armies because of how good they were. Women whose archery skills were so powerful, they were so hot, they would cut off one of their breasts so they could get better aim with their bows. We have a long history of powerful women.
That's right.
The only one I can really think of in terms of Europeans is Joan of Arc, and she lived short. She had a short lifespan. They don't have any of that. So what they're doing is trying to turn their story and everybody else's story so they're no longer odd. You have a minority, global minority, who are taking over the world, if you will, and they're trying to make themselves appear normal by changing everybody else into them.
Right, exactly.
So everything that they do has to be made into everything everybody else
Has to be the
does.
standard. Yeah.
Right. Has to be the standard. So in order to do that, which they've done before, you have to go back and rewrite our story. And make our story reflect their story. So just make us darker than them. That's the measuring rod. So the closest that you are to Europeans is a measurement of your humanity, your intelligence, your greatness. So I tend not to get into, I tend not to get arguments with homos and promos, because I'll get upset. I'll get upset real quick. And to me, it's gotten to a point, oh, now you want to fight. And I'm too old. I'm too old for that, so I don't even get it. I let irritated Jeannie, take care of that, and I'm serious. You're talking about my children. You're talking about my people. Homo. I've lost my composure.
Any other questions?
When President Obama was speaking about traditional African customs, and he was talking about the cutting of women's genitals. Is that, I don't know anything in regard to that.
I don't know anything about the origins of that. I know that it's become a political tool in the hands of feminists, particularly black ones. I don't even want to call them feminists. And there's a difference between a feminist and a womanist and a motherist, in our tradition. I know that for African people, I know that the circumcision for a man is part of the rites of passage into adulthood for some groups. So I'm assuming that there was something else that was with the female that accompanied that. But I don't, because I understand Africa's definition of good and bad. For African people, if it helped people, it was good. If it hurt people, it was bad. And to me, that's perfectly logical. That's a starting point for any definitions of good, bad, or whatever, and evil. And I can't imagine African people systematically doing something like that prior to that. A lot of things that are going on now have been going on for a number of hundreds of years as a result of confusion.
Yes.
A result of what other people are doing.
Right.
That's not to say that we were perfect. We made mistakes. We're human. Maybe some people argue only humans, but we were human. And that's part of the process of becoming an ancestor, going through the trials and errors and making the correct decisions and moving in the right direction. But I can't imagine us doing that kind of damage to our daughters.
Right.
I can't imagine that.
Right.
The problem is, again, like when you are in a situation, in a political situation, in an academic situation, in a media situation that you absolutely do not control. And the only time your voice is heard is either when it's in agreement with that or to show you as an idiot. Then they can say anything they want to. They can rewrite you. They can explain you in any way they want to. Okay? I mean, look what they attempted to do to the irritated Jeannie. Okay? So they can write it any way that they want to. They can say it any way they want to. They can, I mean, we know about the language that's used in describing a black person who kills somebody and a white person who kills somebody. So that's media, and it's not just some elite. I'm not getting into that elite thing either. This is a nation of people. When there was the threat of a riot by black folks in Johannesburg, the gun stores emptied out. When there was a threat of a riot in LA, the gun stores emptied out. They weren't in telephone communication. They understood. They know who they are. They know what they are about. So you have a people that understands that they need to control other people's minds, their way of thinking, their perceptions, their interpretations of reality. And one aspect of that, in terms of inferiorizing them, is to make them look like the beast that they have portrayed us to be. So anything that's a negative, there's going to be some of us, and once you get it, that's a main thing. I'm waiting for somebody to get on the line somewhere and say, oh, well, Baruti's a homo. And guess what? It's going to take off like wildfire among a whole group of people, haters, what have you. It's going to take off. And then, pretty soon, it's going to become the truth. Just like the homosexual community now. Malcolm X was a homosexual. Akhenaten was a homosexual because he was a pacifist. This is part of their truth. This is part of their folklore. Where they're rewriting our story to fit their insanity, their control.
Right.
So it's going to get to a point where if we don't assist the children to understand our truth, and there's no such thing as a statement that's not political. If we don't get the children to understand our truth, and Europeans know that if you want to change the people, you change the children.
Right, exactly.
If we don't get the children to understand our truth, then 2 generations from now, really 2 generations from now, you won't be able to tell them anything about African that's not European. And all that they'll know is a huge lie. And that's all they'll know. And that's all they'll be able to pass on because that's all they know. We're not reaching the children. They're not worried about the adults. They're not worried about the adults.
Let me just very quickly, from my understanding, the female circumcision, that came after the Arab invasion.
Okay.
From my understanding with that. That ain't something that we traditionally did, not like that to the clitoris, no. That ain't something we traditionally did. That, from my understanding, that comes after the Arab invasion.
And interestingly, you would say that I have no evidence, but it registered because I know the relationship between Arabs and physical damage while keeping the person alive. Okay? Many of their armies were African eunuchs.
Yeah.
Most of the men in their harems were African. They weren't homos.
Yes.
Right.
They were eunuchs.
They were eunuchs.
Right.
Because they didn't want these guys to be messing with.
Right. Yeah, the castrate.
So the process of removing parts, that doesn't surprise me about the Arabs, but even less surprises me about Europeans.
And also the Arabs, they had a sex slave trade of African women, men, and both African women, girls, and boys also. They had an Arab sex slave trade as well.
They still have.
Well, they still have.
It's still to this day.
Yes.
Still to this day.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. No answer, no buts.
Before Jose,
Before Jose.
I heard you say you said the term womanist and feminist.
The term what?
The term womanist and feminist. Can you break that down? Because my question is, I feel like in this day and age we have people taking terms and things like that and they're redefining it and putting new definitions on it and things like that. And my question to you is, you have some people that say, that there's a need for like a feminist movement, and you got a lot of people in the African community or the African American Negro community, they take terms and redefine it and they say that well, we're not feminists but we're black feminists. Do you feel like that's detrimental, or is that something that's needed as far as being a black feminist? And can you break down what you said about womanists and feminists?
If it's redefined, it's like black Marxists, black capitalists, if it's redefined in African terms, but they're not redefined in African terms. Feminism, Western feminism, is about replacing European males with European females. So I want to be in a position to exploit like you do, and I want you to be removed from that power because you've been exploiting me. It's a matter of power over. That's pure and simple. We got nothing to do with that. We're being used as fodder. Been used as fodder in their Marxist movement, all the rest of this for centuries. I prefer, if it's at all possible, not to use their terms when I'm talking about us. I prefer to go back and get something that is us. And the community really latches on to terms that are us. There's motherism really came out of the idea, as well as, not so womanism, but motherism really came out of the idea of a child-centered society. So the child-centered people, then if we're talking about women's rights, if we're talking about the strength of African women, then it needs to focus on fact that they are the childbearers, that they bring life. Okay, so motherism is a redefinition of that. This respect that they're supposed to have, that is in many ways gone because we've adopted somebody else's interpretation of male-female relationships. The womanism I don't see is so different from that. Now there is a very good discussion of the concept of feminism from an African-centered perspective that's done by, it's in the last ASCAP journal. What's her name? I need to slap myself. And I can see her face. She's married to Mario Beatty.
Oh, I know Mario.
And I know her. That's the bad part.
It'll come to you.
Yeah, it'll come to me. She wrote a very good article discussing feminism from an African-centered perspective. And a very, very good. India likes it. I like it too. And it's very hard for me to deal with the concept of feminism because of all the politics that are involved with it. I can see her face. Okay. And as soon as I walk out the door, I'll remember what it is. Yes.
Oh, you got an answer?
And I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to call Ina Yao to see what her name is because this is an important article. Yes, I'm listening. I'm not like some folks who be on their phone. Phone is not my friend.
That's for me? Oh,
Yes.
Peace first and foremost. My question is, what is your take on polygamy in a modern day perspective?
Valethia Watkins. Valethia Watkins.
You just need the energy. You didn't speak to it.
Valethia Watkins. It's a very good. It's a very good. And she's gonna get upset when I call her. Polygamy is part of our tradition.
But
Absolutely.
in a modern day context, in the same society that we have.
In this society,
Yeah.
it's extremely problematic because people aren't developed into the level of maturity that it was in our traditional society. To me, that's the major issue there, because it worked for reasons, very good reasons, and I don't see a problem with it. But with the level of maturity that people have in this society, most of them it's a simple game, and it becomes play at various times in there. I've seen it work. I know a brother in Philadelphia who is working with, I know a Baba in DC that is working with, very well, even though he advises young folks don't do it. Yeah.
You said he advises young folks
Don't do it.
Right.
He
It's
said
a lot of
don't.
responsibility for the man. This is what
Right.
people don't understand. It ain't a party.
Oh, no, it's not a party, because if you were in traditional African society, you had to prove that you were capable of managing this additional wife and everything that went along with that,
Right.
which to me should be a qualification today.
Right. Exactly.
And that means that you're talking to people who understand traditional, and there's nothing, we use the word traditional, and because of what Europeans have done with it language-wise, that means outdated, outmoded, back in the day, archaic. No, tradition is what makes a people work. It's what a people develop around it. Europeans have not left their traditions. Anybody who's in power has not left their traditions. Culture. Or their culture, the traditions, have not left that. They maintain that intact. If we had kept our tradition, or if we rebuild our traditions, then my answer would be yes, because it's not necessarily modern times, it's just today. We're just doing the same thing that we have been doing, but we have to adapt to maybe different external threats and other stuff, and the legal system in this country, if we were to do it in this country, what have you. But other than that, we're doing the same thing. And it's not just a survival strategy, it is the development of community. There's a reason why you didn't have prostitution in traditional African society, because no sister was ever disconnected from her family, even if he wasn't there. And she had the right. In traditional African society, his brothers were obligated to incorporate her into their family or marry her. That was That was part of the process. But, speaking of the power of women, she had the right to refuse him. And that's the confusion in terms of people, and I've got too far away from your question. The confusion comes with European interpretations of African traditions. So, when in African traditions, if I wanted to marry her, I'd have to go ask her people, and then she would be asked by her people, and she would say no, and that's the end of the discussion. In the West, we get this idea that this child bride marriage mess that they got going on. No, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. That's not part of our traditions. She could say no, and I'm okay. Well, lost that one. That was the end of that discussion. But when we're looking at things through their eyes, if I was Ina, her answer would be simple. Until we gain sovereignty, then nothing's going to work for us well. Until we gain sovereignty, nothing's going to work for us well. Because until you're in charge of your political, your economic, your familial, family, your educational, your spiritual, your military institutions, you're not you. You're not you. You can't be African with somebody else in charge of what the definition of being African is.
Somebody else defines your reality.
Somebody else defines your reality. Somebody else defines what manhood is for you. What womanhood is for you. What childhood is for you. And all over their world, they're lowering the age at which a child can give consent. I forget if it was Sweden or somewhere they lowered the age for children to have sex with adults. But the history was interesting because they lowered the age for children to have sex because there were so many animals that were being brought into the vet's place, Sweden, that were being sexually violated that they started allowing the adults to have sex with the children. Again. But this is a mentality that's driven in a particular way. I'm not faulting them because what is normal and natural for you is what you should do. I'm faulting us because this is not us.
Right. What age did they lower it down to? You know?
I don't remember. And they just lowered it. Just saw an article yesterday. I forget what other European nation, they just lowered it someplace else. And they're going to keep lowering. That's part of the process.
Right.
But
Classical Greek society, pedophilia was the primary form of homosexual relationships. They never stopped doing this.
Exactly.
They just had to bring the rest of the world down to their level, and the rest of the world think that they were the authority, and now they're simply doing what they've been doing. This hasn't changed.
Right.
We keep getting surprised at what they have never stopped doing.
Oh, I'm surprised you're surprised.
You got to look at where sadism, it came from a particular individual who practiced this as an art in European society. Masochism, came from a man's name in traditional European society because he practiced this as an art. Go buy you a dictionary of sex.
Yeah.
I had to read 4 of them to write the sex imperative. That was like the worst reading time in my life. I couldn't read more than 4 pages at a time. The stuff that they have been doing and the stuff that they have in there. I'm talking about in there.
Wow.
Images.
No images, just words. Words are descriptive enough. But they have been practiced enough to be common enough to be included in a dictionary. We're like 1 person or 2 people.
Right.
So what we are looking at today, that's why I said we're maybe the 8th grade, maybe the 9th grade, maybe the 10th grade.
We don't.
We have nothing.
We have to understand their history to understand what they're capable of doing.
Now there is, I went to the page one time. They continually update what the latest sexual crazes are. They'll list them in 5. So like the 5 latest sexual, they won't say insanities because it's them. Like they'll trends or something like that. And the stuff that's going on now, that they're bringing in now, it's enough to make you cry. Because I know our children are doing it too.
Exactly.
Following them.
Exactly. Because it's more accessible to our youth. Pornography is they can access it right on their smartphone. Yeah. You know, it's more accessible too.
When I wrote the sex imperative, when I published the sex imperative in 2002, part of my research was to go online to see what pornography was available. And two interesting things happened. One, you know, you had to use a credit card for everything if you want to see past a certain thing. And I want to see past a certain thing because I want to know what the insanities were. The other one was, at that time, they would lock your computer up. So I typed in Thurgood Marshall's wife, because this was separate from that, but I typed in Thurgood Marshall's wife because I wanted to show the students that she wasn't an African woman, she was an Asian woman. And this porno site took over my computer, pictures flashing all over the place. I tried to get, it would not let me get out of the computer. I had to unplug it. And when I came back, a brother had to come and erase it. Now, you don't need a credit card to see anything. So a 3-year-old can see more than what I was able to see just coming online. Just come online. Just type in sex. Type in pornography. Type in any word and it will flood you. The largest watched pornography online now is pedophilia with bestiality right behind it.
In the Arab tradition, 8 years.
All right.
8 years.
Yeah.
They can marry them at 8.
They can marry them at 8 years.
8 years old.
8 years old. In the Arab tradition. I was doing some research, and in Yemen and them certain other Middle Eastern countries, they would marry 8-year-old girls and try to impregnate them at 8-year-old.
Because European Jews.
No, Arabs.
No, I said, look at European Jews. They're not marrying them in the same way. And they're not impregnating the same way. But they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
European Jews, yes.
the European Jews.
And I don't say Jews, they're European Jews. They're not Jews.
European Ashkenazi Khazars.
Yes.
Ashkenazi Khazars. That's the
Europeans.
European Ashkenazi Khazars.
And we put the European, as long as folks understand, the European. Because they
And Baba, do you think that if anything is to be built, it's better to build it in Africa than build it in this white supremacy state?
That's getting harder to answer. And the reason why it's getting hard to answer is because a lot of people who ask me that,
A lot's changed.
they're trying to escape this. True. And they're running right into the middle of
Fine.
invasion force.
Fine.
We have to understand, you gotta fight where you're at. The assault of Europeans against African people is everywhere we are.
It's everywhere.
I wish it was,
It's
but
everywhere.
I can't imagine what Africa's gonna be like in another 15, 20 years. And there, for me, even though I have, no problem with being there, that's my home. I need a weapon. I don't have access in the same way as I have over here. I can't protect things away, and they're coming. And the Negroes over there will kill you just as quickly as the Negroes over here.
Right. People forget that.
So I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem if people want to move to the continent and they see that as a place to build, and they have, ideas about how to build and land. Go. One of the brothers whose picture's up there, he's gone. He's taking his family, and I can't think of a better person to go. But for me, my work is right here, right now. My work is here right now. And I have a legitimate excuse. My mother is heading toward 90. I don't want to have to be able to travel back and forth. I also don't want to, if I'm going to go there, then I'm through with this. And once you lose your citizenship,
Yep. That's it.
Well, in first to begin in the 13th and 14th here, in the 13th and 14th Amendment, no African on this soil is ever a citizen. They're all subjects. They're all subjects.
that's true. Absolutely. I know, the formality of it. Greetings. You were at the, yes.
Touching back on that subject, because about kids and what they're exposed to, like, one, how do you, parents talk and everything, reminds of, a lot of children have had those scenarios, just like we just explained, where they went online and stuff started popping up on their kids, or they were with, their child with another child who's exposed to something or something like that. You know what I'm saying? How do you repair children from who have already been damaged in that way? one, and then two, how do you, how does our community, because the thing is, it's like, we still kind of have this haphazard way of, I guess, talking to, nobody wants to talk to kids about sex and stuff like that, it's uncomfortable, right? But like, how do you, but some parents, like some sisters I know, they try to be very upfront and vocal about everything, they just tell their kids everything, and then, so, which other people think, well, that's too much, don't tell them too much too soon. How do you, but you have to be realistic, because your kid goes to playground, your kid goes to school, if you're not, a lot of us don't have the means to have them under lock, keep homeschooling them under some, some format. So we have to be real, kids are exposed to stuff. I mean, I was born in the 80s, we was exposed to stuff before 10 years old. You understand? So now it's just much less. So how do we, or much younger, how do we develop a system as far as talking to them about healthy sexuality, healthy relationships, those type of things?
First thing is, yeah, it is much younger. There was an article NEI wants to talk about,